Happy Wednesday,
Hey,
everybody.
friends. Welcome back.
Oh, we're so excited that you're here. And if you are here, give yourself a pat on the back because we are about to have the most fiery conversation about innovation with probably the three most innovative females/humans on the planet. So prepare yourselves. And we just want to introduce ourselves. We're Becky and John. We're the co-founders of We Are for Good. We Are for Good is a digital kindness company and a new media company working to democratize everything that's working right now in social impact and nonprofit through sharing of stories, ideas, and getting each other unstuck in a way that still perpetuates inclusion, justice, diversity, and taking care of you as a human being.
So we want to get to know you, everyone joining us. We'd love to see you in the comments throughout this. You can share some emoji. You know, this entire platform is powered by you. So we want you in this conversation. So get into the chat, and there's also a Q&A button. Tag that, and we are going to hopefully have time for questions at the end with these panelists. So get in there. We want to get to know you and tell us where you're calling in from today. Hey, good morning. We're seeing Cape Cod already. Oh my gosh. How cool.
It's great that we're global today.
I love it.
Okay, we got to introduce these incredible panelists. They are absolutely outstanding at what they do. And P.S., they're incredible human beings as well. But I want to start out by introducing Peng. She is the CEO of JustFund. And y'all, if you have not heard of JustFund, they are one of the most progressive social enterprises right now that are really building critical social justice infrastructure to really achieve that more equitable and reflective democracy. And the thing that we love about Yada is she says money moves at the speed of trust. And if that doesn't hit you right between the eyes like it did us the first time we hit it, you just have to know that she is your person. But JustFund is this incredible online innovative portal, and it's connecting funders directly to organizations like yours to help move resources more quickly while still having trust, transparency, and accountability. So I think we can all get on board with that. Our dear friend Yada, she's a mom, an entrepreneur, and she is coming to us from the Bay Area in San Francisco. So glad to have you here, Yada.
So happy to be here.
Good to see you. And it is my huge honor to introduce Alison Moore. She's the CEO of Comic Relief US. And my friends, her backstory, we're going to drop the podcast episode where Alison came on. But this is a veteran in the media and entertainment kind of space. I mean, working casually for Condé Nast and HBO and all these names that you would know. But what I love about Alison is she is now channeling that bigger vision, that bigger picture of how do you mobilize, how do you engage, how do you connect with audiences into the nonprofit space. So through Comic Relief US, and I got to say, I just bought my red nose last couple weeks ago in Puerto Rico. So
Julie bought one the other day in New York City. It's happening. The revolution's happening.
So Comic Relief powers this incredible Red Nose campaign and other really disruptive campaigns, but they're using this kind of convergence of media to really start conversations. And so we just really love her. She's calling in from New York. No one would guess that you're from New York right now. Look at that background. It's so New York. Good to have you, Alison.
Last but certainly not least is the queen of innovation in the nonprofit world. We've got Sarah Lee joining us. She is the COO of News Story. You have probably heard of News Story because Fast Company has repeatedly denoted them as being one of the most innovative nonprofits in the U.S. And they are powering solutions that are working to end global homelessness. If you have not seen their TikTok, it is absolutely off the chain, telling incredible stories. And Sarah is just leading the growth strategy, the vision, all through the lens of innovation. This nonprofit has innovation as a core value. We're going to be diving into that. And I really think this quote about Sarah that she said on our podcast was really powerful. And she said, building differently is in our DNA. So if you are open to building differently, this is really what this conversation is going to imagine. And Sarah's based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And so thank you for the love and the comments for all our panelists. We got to get into it and we got to quit talking.
I know. So, okay, before we hop in, we love to give a good tone set. Innovation, we really believe, starts from within each of us. And, we had a conversation just yesterday about leadership, what that looks like today, and really having an evolved mindset. But to have an innovation mindset and a culture of that, we have to pour in intentionally into that. And so that conversation is going to span from that to just hacks of how people like News Story and Comic Relief are doing this in real time. And I'm just so excited to get all these insights. So without further ado, let's jump in here. I want to start with a question for all the panelists. This is where you can jump in. We want to hear each of your perspectives and take on innovation in the nonprofit sector today. And Alison, you come by first. Alison, let's start with you.
Great. Well, thanks again for having us here. I love this topic, and this one in particular is really resonant with me. I think, coming from different sectors, you said my background is commercial and sort of, media and entertainment space, jumping into philanthropy and just this sector overall, it's not talked enough not talked about enough, innovation. It's just, it's not an assumed state of being. It's sort of like a rarity that it's assumed to be a rarity of findings in this sector. And I just couldn't tell you, it's the complete opposite. Innovation is everywhere. And nonprofits are innovative. We're experimental. We are thinking about, trying to have impactful solutions to some of the world's most stressing problems. And then there's a huge need for the public, for the capital markets, for places that are investing in innovation to understand that it is actually happening here. Because I think the barrier to innovation is, yes, there's thinking, there's cultures, there's mindsets, there's all innovative thinking and sort of processing, but it's also access to capital. Material investment. I mean, this is what's predicated in the commercial markets. This is what allows people to get wired $7 million for a little idea on a PowerPoint that's, meant to scale like a hockey stick later on. Why can't that also be applied within the context of the nonprofit and philanthropic sector? Because that access to that capital is what's going to drive the ideas. So for us, yes. I think that we occupy this interesting space of entertainment, engagement and impact. And it really requires a constant vision and a constant innovation focus to be able to meet audiences where they are, because that's how we do it through public fundraising, and to be able to scale that kind of construct through just more and more initiatives that can go out there and kind of put in moments of magic and joy for like a Red Nose Day or like a Kids Relief to individuals that are meeting in places of scale. But that all costs money to build and support. And then raising dollars and then taking those dollars to invest it back into organizations who are doing really innovative work on the ground. So it's not just like innovations in fundraising and tech and all that kind of stuff, but it's also innovation in reimagining the grant making and like where are the places that we are investing in, putting support in, and thinking about, community leaders and thinking about leaders who have proximate experience and some of the innovations that they're coming up with. I mean, that's innovative thinking that needs to be funded too. So I think that's, for me, it's so much about, and I know we're going to talk more about this, just, building cultures and doing that with your teams and thinking about ideas and fresh ways of thinking and all of that. But I want to be able to have the space to be able to incubate new ideas and to operationalize them and take some risks and see some failures, but do that in the spirit of just, doing more to create material change. And I just think less strings, less paperwork, less conditional access rules, less, more trust and more investment will drive more innovation.
Where's the preach button on the comments?
I was about to say, I think I just heard the collective cheer from the nonprofit sector, specifically on releasing the strings tied to grant making. So thank you for all of that.
Yada, you want to hop in next?
Well, I just can't wait to, after this conversation, Google what scaling like a hockey stick looks like and what that means. Yeah. I mean, I'm first generation American, so I get all of these things mixed up. But anytime I hear these expressions, I can't wait to Google that later. I love it, Alison. And I think, you hit the nail on the head, where this is, to me, about a risk tolerance and our appetite for failure, and we have a culture, I think, in nonprofits where we're leaning more into this culture of measuring success. What are your impacts? Where are your benchmarks? How are you hitting your targets? And that is not a culture, that does not facilitate a culture of innovation. And we have to be ready to lean all the way into failure, for us to be able to innovate and take risks. And that's how we're going to learn. I mean, I remember talking to one of the founders of one of the biggest online platforms that we all use here in our everyday. And I said, tell me your story. How'd you get here? And he said, I failed 5 times before I figured out this model. And I was so naive about how venture capital works. And I was just, thinking it was like philanthropy, and said, well, wow, how did you get investors to like new investors every time you failed? And he just like belly laughed and said, oh no, these investors invest in me to fail because they know the faster I fail, the closer I'm going to get to the winning solution. right? That's how innovation works. And that is just the antithesis of how we're funding in philanthropy and in nonprofits. We want to see a return on our investment in 6 months. How come you didn't hit your target? How come you didn't get this idea off the ground? And we need to create more spaciousness and more of an appetite and more of just a really warm environment for failure, because that's how we're going to get to winning solutions. So I can't wait to drive that change, you know, among all of us here in our beautiful sector, where there is, like Alison said, so much innovation. And hey, it's not that complicated. Let's just fund people closest to the issues. They are closest to the solutions. You fund people with direct lived experience, they're going to get us our winning answers. We just are not flowing resources to those communities. I mean, it's atrocious when you look at the numbers, and we can dive more into that. But it's just not that complicated, and we can do it. So I'm excited to get there together.
I mean, you can tell from the chat, this is what the sector has needed to hear. And if I could drop this microphone, I would, but I think Tyler's going to get upset with me, because those are great mic drop moments. Sarah, talk about this from your perspective. Oh, you're still quiet. We can't hear you yet, Sarah. We're going to work on sound, and then we'll come back to you. How about that? Okay, you work on your sound, and I'll come back to you, because I think we've got a great start here, because both of you mentioned culture as being a part of the movement. And I do think that scarcity mindset and the way that we've always done it, these are like grounding principles that stall our work, and they have just been habitually perpetuated. So I want to talk about, how do you foster cultures of innovation? And we have two powerhouses, nonprofit powerhouses in Sarah and in Alison, who have done this. And I wanted you to talk about how innovation has manifested within your organizations. How have you seen it on the bottom line? How has it been represented? And Alison, I'll start with you, and Sarah, we'll cross our fingers when we come back to you. Got some sound.
Sure. You know, I think I've always gravitated towards roles just historically in my background, whether it was, you know, at HBO and on digital and SoundCloud and Conde and NBCU, that just had a healthy amount of innovation as an expectation for the work. And so when you start to think about that and just building like new business models or units or that kind of thing that are sort of challenging status quo, you have to put together a team and a mindset and a thinking and build a culture to actually support that, and do so particularly if you're in like a sort of small startup in a larger organization. So, you know, I think just those principles got applied for me here in the same way when I started with Comic Relief, and really building a culture of innovation anywhere. So whether it's there or here requires vision, but also a can do versus can't, or, you know, mindset, and really being able to not only see the big ideas and talk about them and intellectualize them, but importantly, and I think importantly for nonprofits, operationalizing them, right? And it really requires a lot of, I mean, our team is small. I'm sure everyone else's on this screen's team is small. It's not meant to have like a lot of different people working on every piece of the machinery. So collaboration and teamwork is imperative, but also shoulder to shoulder with our partners. You know, our grantee partners are not just places that we, you know, give funds and then we'll call y'all next year. You know what I mean? We really do partner together to kind of think about the solutions and innovations and where we can help them even operationalize when we can, all the different facets of their work. So for us, it's day one that we kind of started on innovation. And I think when we started to change our lens or really deepen our lens in our work from, you know, our broad vision of a just world free from poverty, we, through our theory of change work, dug into that and really identified breaking cycles of intergenerational poverty as our lens. And that was a very, you know, new focus for us. But what it required for us is to just completely operationalize in a different framework. And it was exciting, but it was a really complex challenge that we had to dive into it a little bit in a deeper way, you know. So we started to think about our values and started to think about how we ensure that every kind of action that is involved, that we are working on, particularly in our grant making, aligned with the values that we find core here. And align that to our kind of new vision and lens. So obviously, you know, just as by way of example, our diversity and inclusion values were a centerpiece in all of that work. And so we launched an empowerment pillar in 2021. That we had 4 pillars: safety, health, education, and added empowerment. So where we could start to think about youth leadership and economic development for young people. Much of our portfolio had focused on children only, but, you know, in the U.S. particularly, when you get to age 18, there's a tendency towards, well, you're not a kid anymore. So the programs that were supported and, you know, up to 18, and good luck to you. And we knew inherently, when you start to think about generational poverty and you start to think about the cycles that keep groups of folks and communities systemically in that space, you need to unlock and unblock empowerment for young people in a really material way. And so that really changed our work and thinking about innovation differently in the way we invest. And so we've increased investment in BIPOC-led and community-led organizations. We've increased the number of grantees from 10 to about 40 in the last 3.5 years. Small, medium, and large, scaled organizations like the Global Fund and, large organizations like Covenant House, but organizations like Glasswing and GrowDat and Malala Fund, and a wide table of doing very different work. And then we've actually increased our investment in those BIPOC-led organizations from 6% to 42% over the last 2.5 years. And that, these are all just examples of having to shift. You can shift the mindset, but you got to shift the work too, and that really is the only way you can do that, is have everybody in stem to stern in the organization is breathing innovation and innovative thinking and solution making and problem solving. And I feel like we've done that. I mean, this team, they're brilliant. They're small but mighty. You know what I mean? So.
And I don't know that anyone would have thought Red Nose Team is so small, because it feels like a brand that is so prolific globally. And I think that adds a lot of humility to this conversation that I thank you. And it also talks about how innovation is core as you continue to iterate and add pillars. We did the exact same thing. We started with 7 core values. We realized we were missing the biggest core value, and we had to add it midway through our first season, adding that community is everything. And so I want to kick this to Sarah. I want her to answer this question as well, but we've got a great question in the chat, Yada, that I think you have an answer for, and we're going to come back to that. So Sarah, what about you with your culture?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things, and I'm glad you guys can hear me now. There's a couple of things that we thought about when it comes to operationalizing innovation within cultures. And that is, number one, focus. If you don't have focus organizationally, you cannot innovate, because you will constantly be spread and trying to try new things everywhere, which means likely nothing will work. And so I think that the reason why organizations who really have innovation at the forefront of all they do is because they have focus. And so that focus, we use the phrase a lot around here, focus will set you free. And focus is what enables us to be free, to try new things, to actually innovate in our work. Like Alison was saying, it has to be more than just words on a wall or words in a paper. It has to be actually, how are you showing up as an organization? And I think the other place that it has really impacted our organization, and a place that we haven't always gotten it right, is really creating a foundation for risk taking, right? Everybody mentioned this in the beginning with how do we see innovation in the nonprofit sector right now? And I think that you really have to create an environment and a culture where it's okay to fail. And that's something that's really easy to say out loud, like, take risks, be willing to fail. But as leaders, when we're on the hook for impact numbers and metrics and growing and hockey sticks, it's a lot easier to actually back that up with actions that gives your team the psychological safety that they need to feel like they can experiment. One of the big kind of innovations that put News Story on the map was doing the first 3D printed community in the world for some of the poorest families in the world in Mexico. And we were going back and forth with our board and donors on, was this like a wise decision for us, right? It was super risky. And one of our donors asked us the question of like, what's on the line if you don't try? Or what's on the line if this works? And so that really bred this question in us, or this thought in us of, what is irresponsible not to try? And so for some of the questions I'm seeing in the chat, I'm like, what do you do when people are reluctant to innovate across the organization in a time that you really need it? For me, it comes down to the question of how much you care about your mission, right? And how might innovation help you go so much further faster? Because there is a point that it's irresponsible not to try new things when the world's biggest problems are in many cases just getting bigger.
Oh my gosh. All right, y'all. I mean, I'm kind of feeling exposed in some of this too as like a founder. So I appreciate the wisdom. I want to kick it to Yada, because I think this comment from Nan in the quote in the chat, I think we can all relate to. What do you do when your founder or maybe your ED is reluctant to some of this? And I want to give space to just, surround her in support right now.
Yes, absolutely. Such a great question in a real situation for so many of us. And, I'm a big fan of quick wins, and I learned agile business planning later in my career. I mean, I went to business school, have a master's in nonprofit management. I never learned any of this stuff until I started building nonprofits, right? Which I've been building nonprofits for 25 years. And it wasn't until I started building a tech-based nonprofit that I was introduced to agile-based business planning, which is a really beautiful model of trying to experiment in sprints, right? You maybe set up 2-week sprints, and in those sprints, you're going to experiment. You're going to be doing some really focused, to Sarah's point, like A/B testing. I'm going to send this email with this content. I'm going to send this email with that content. Let's see which one performs. This is what people are doing all day long when it comes to lead generation, or more, tech savvy companies are doing a lot of this work. We can do it too. And these quick wins are really important for NAN because you can experiment with small little bites versus like, we're going to do an 18-month strategic plan. We're going to shift culture. Sometimes, you can have that work that works really hard for an organization to go through, that kind of change management. But if you start experimenting and getting some quick wins under your belt, people start to feel it and feel that momentum and want to welcome that change in a different way. We've seen that here at JustFund, where we have a culture of experimentation and failure because what we're doing is new, right? No one's ever built the common grant application. We're the only platform in the United States that has a common grant application. There's a lot of really exciting things that can stem from there. But one of the most exciting pieces is no one's done it. So we've got to experiment until we find our way forward. But for companies that have a founder and an ED reluctant to change, I really encourage you to think about small bite-sized quick wins, where you can start to say, hey, we tried that, we did this the traditional way, and we also did a small segment in a new way, and here's what we learned. So you can start to show people that change isn't so scary. The whole foundation is not going to break. In fact, to Sarah's point, we're going to innovate and maybe do things even better, right? So I think there's a way, of course, we have to bring all of our, our founders, our EDs on board, and this is one way we can do it.
I mean, brilliant insight. Love that so much. I know as we're talking about innovation, there's kind of this blend of risk and reward with each of these different steps. What are some strategies for minimizing that risk while really maximizing the potential benefits? I'll kick it back to you, Yada.
In terms of taking risks and maximizing those for benefits, I mean, philanthropy was designed to take risks. That was the culture. That was the whole point of having a philanthropic, system and industry, is that we are the one entity that can take risks, not business, not government, but philanthropy can. And that's how we solve systemic problems. We're not going to find a cure for cancer if we we're only going to fund you if you find the cure. Like, that's not how it works, right? Everyone's trying and innovating and experimenting and figuring it out. And that's how we're going to solve these big problems. Same thing in social justice, in our communities that are suffering, whether you want to talk about gun violence, all of our major crises in the US and big problems, small problems, we need to be able to take risks and innovate. And we've got to lean into that culture. And philanthropy is the one place where you don't have to have an ROI, right? You don't have to have a return on. We're creating that culture, but that's our choice. We can also choose to do something differently, right? We can lean into all this like new wrapping paper of trust-based philanthropy, multi-year grants, give people a long runway. I mean, in the for-profit sector, we know that people are given 5 years, right? 5 years of funding. In nonprofits, it's like, here's 6 months, go, build the newest, greatest thing on $5,000. Like, not going to work that way. We have to really shift the way we're funding and allow these risks to happen. And every time you're failing, you're learning, right? And that's the culture we're trying to create. It's not like you fail and you're bad and wrong. You failed and you learned something. So even in our team meetings, we'll have our team meeting today at noon. That's what we start with. What'd you learn today? What'd you learn this week, right? Where did you fail? Because you want to like facilitate that culture of, I tried this, didn't work. Here's what I'm going to try next.
I mean, can you imagine if you were sitting in a team meeting and your boss literally said, congratulations, you failed. We're really proud of you, because all of a sudden, again, back to that psychological safety, you feel like you can take risk again. I mean, I don't think I ever experienced that sort of dynamic when in 20 years of nonprofit, but I see the hope that we're moving there. Having these conversations is one of those little nudges that moves us a little bit further. And I do think mindsets is a huge game of that, and getting out of the scarcity mindset that blocks us in nonprofit. And I want to kick this question to you, Sarah. How can nonprofits, everyone listening right now, I see how this conversation is resonating. How can they work on their mindsets, to be reflective of what Yad is talking about, of the risks that we're taking? I mean, we got a phrase in our house, you don't lose, you learn. How are you building toward that and constantly seeking feedback and really talking about your success and failures and what they mean? I would love to hear how News Story does this, because I think the way that you innovate and fail forward is just a beautiful example of modern day nonprofits really taking this bull by the horns.
Yeah, I'll talk about one of the places that we've failed and kind of what we changed in that process that I think is helpful for all of us. And I think where we failed implementing innovation in our first years as an organization was we didn't have enough patience. And so we were constantly on this seesaw of, did this innovation just not work and we need to move on to the next thing, versus have we just not given it enough time? And at nonprofits, that's a really hard balance to decide which end of the spectrum are you on, and how are you going to know which end of the spectrum are you on? And so I encourage everyone, as they're thinking about what does innovation look like on a small scale or on a big scale, to start with, how are we going to know if this is working or not working? And I think having those guiding questions, metrics, or indicators from the beginning is really helpful. So if you're trying a new project or a new process or anything in between, a new email sequence, right? It can be very small things. Having what does success look like and when will we know to stop, I think is really helpful as you're on that journey, because then you're not wasting time and resources if you shouldn't be. You're not allowing yourself to get delusioned by like just one more, and you're not allowing yourself to give up too early. And so that's one major thing that comes to mind that I think we've been able to implement and has been really transformational in how we have operationalized innovation from our kind of very early days to now.
I mean, it seems like it comes back to where you started this conversation with just like that clarity. I mean, if you're real clear about where you're headed, it allows you to, kind of run everything through that matrix. So, okay, we believe in the power of just innovation to allow us to move faster, but also to like raise more funds, grow our partnerships. And Alison, your team is doing this incredibly well, not just with your stakeholders, but with new audiences. And so I want to kick it to you and talk about how are you powering this innovation through that lens?
Oh,
muted.
You're on mute, Alison. Thanks for making it human, because this is real life right here.
All right. This is like, I should be used to this whole thing by now, but I think I hit a button. I'm sorry. So we are lucky in that and grateful for, frankly, the very vibrant and strong Red Nose Day campaign that, we continue to kind of thread innovation through that campaign and really think about doing things differently in our support of children living in poverty and thinking about what that changes in our grant making, as I mentioned earlier, but also just how we kind of innovate in bringing that to audiences. And a lot of that is really dependent on partnerships. I mean, our partnerships with Walgreens and NBC have been crucial in our ability to kind of innovate and think about it differently and talk to and connect with individuals. And, I think there's a 6 degrees, it was based on an Accenture report, I think, about 8 seconds between inspiration and action. And when you think about that in retail, that's a very kind of like clogged up time for somebody to actually kind of think about to actually act. And the magic of the Red Nose is that it does it very quickly without a big explanation and, white paper or thinking about it's just like a moment to kind of do something and be a part of something in the community right then and there. And so what we want to do is taking an innovation lens, replicate that on multiple different platforms in places that we can, and new platforms where we know young people are gathering, right? And young donors and young individuals who are donating. I mean, their mindsets have changed and their expectations have changed. So we just launched, by way of example, we launched the Kids Relief campaign just recently. And it's a great example of how we're trying to think about how can we take that magic of just really engaging in a different way and a different kind of platform, and then creating this to be a place where we can continually innovate over and over again. And so we launched a game called Solarpunk Simulator on Roblox, which is basically a gaming experience that gives young people the ability to make change through gameplay. And that was really about empowering change makers and aligning with our empowerment pillar, because to be able to understand kind of what it is that the elements that drive change for young people. And so we launched this game experience. And then we also, it was accompanied with a concert from a guy called Boy With You, who's an amazing performer who did this incredible concert for us in game, and then had a couple of our comic relief friends like Jack Black and a couple of YouTube stars to come in and sort of amplify and kind of get audiences really raised up. I have to say, it was like, and to your point, Sarah, and Yada, it's like we put this on the table. It was like we didn't want to build a game that was just like a launch and leave game where it's just like, oh, I hope it's a game that works, and then kind of this is a game that's meant to be an ecosystem for us. This needed to be built in a way that actually could sustain gameplay and engage audiences and that they'd want to play, because the more that they play, the more that we are able to kind of create this sort of multiple kind of areas of fundraising around it. We had a partnership with Wonderworks, which is a developer who's one of the lead developers at Roblox. We had to do it in an innovative way. We needed to get that funded by an individual and a partner of ours, Evan Siegel Foundation, who helped us, who said, look, I want to see you build this. I want to see you take this to build this to scale and be able to engage audiences, because he too believed in next gen audiences. So long story short, we've launched this, put this out in the world, kind of like peeking behind the covers to be like, can we do this? And can we manage an environment like this? And we have had almost 5 million gameplays to date. It blew past our numbers of percentages over the amount of engagement, gameplay lasting, the number of impressions, the kind of, engagement that we've been able to encounter. And we had the #1 liked concert on Roblox and the number 18th in terms of popular concerts on Roblox. And we beat out Sir Elton John. Okay, I just had to say that. I like him a lot. And the Chainsmokers, which is a weird sort of like compendium of artists. But anyway, I was a little long in the tooth on that. But I'm just like, that is an example of, if you had told me coming into this role, like, hey, this, you should be starting and thinking about things on a gaming platform, I would have been like, is that the right thing? Does it only have to be direct mail and no, it needs to be all this stuff. And we need to be okay with like trying and doing our best and then like growing that as a platform. And that's exactly what we intend to do. And it's just a great way. And then hopefully that will grow to be, have the vibrancy and the innovation as Red Nose Day has. We'll continue to innovate there. Kids Relief, we're bringing back Comic Relief, that brand. We have to innovate across all of it. Now we can't hear you. See,
oh, you can't hear us? Got it now? Okay. Yeah. We're having a little technical difficulties, but I have to say, I want to live in a world where nonprofits can accelerate their brand beyond Sir Elton John, who I also love as well. So
amazing. I want to say that right now.
Day. So excited about it. So I want to pitch this to you, Sarah, because I think you could give some great examples about how are you accelerating innovation while still saving your team time. And I feel like we've heard about this a lot when we visited with you. You have such great case studies about how innovation is actually saving time, saving mental health and sanity, which we honestly believe is absolutely part and parcel to working in this work, is finding balance. Like, talk about that a little bit and maybe give some tips for how you've seen it play out at New Story that others can apply. She's like, I'm coming back. Okay.
We're taking risks.
Yeah, we are taking risks.
While
she's like, back.
I would just say,
yeah, get in there, Yada.
While she's coming back in, I'll just say, I was just writing in the chat here to you, Allison, that these innovations are amazing. It's so amazing. And I really love what you're saying about partnerships, and that partnerships can help us accelerate innovation. That's just so powerful and true. We don't have to do it all. Right? We sometimes think we have to take steps A to Z all by ourselves. And actually, when you partner, you can innovate that much faster. And I love it. I've seen it. I've experienced it in my life. We're experiencing it right now at JustFund as we partner with some different APIs to help us make moving money more quickly to movements happen. I just wanted to just put an exclamation point on your comment that partnerships help us accelerate innovation. I think it's so true and really an important point.
And I feel like you're apologetic about that comment. And it's like, it is everything. You are not alone in this. This is why we added community is everything. It's not just an external community, but what you're building internally has got to be synced. Sarah, keep going.
Yeah, I was going to say it was meant to be that my mic keeps having problems because that was a perfect tee up. I think when we think about partnerships as nonprofits, it can feel overwhelming, right? Like, how are we going to get this person or this company to make this dream we have come alive? One of the practices we have seen really helpful at News Story and implementing innovation is actually just doing it cross-organizationally, right? So bringing together teams that don't typically work together and having them brainstorm and work on projects or problems and innovating those ideas can often bring new perspectives. So one of our values is improve through learning and feedback. And so we may have small group sessions that brings one person from each department. So group is, 5 or 6 people, and somebody saying, okay, on our impact team, we're having this problem. Our surveyors in the field are taking way longer to upload the work because there's not Wi-Fi accessible in the places that we work. How might we solve this problem? And bringing together our creative team, our fundraising team, our finance team brings those diverse experiences and ideas that I think actually can make innovation super tangible for everyone in a way that you can dream super big, but you can also make it really practical for whatever's happening organizationally by just bringing fresh ideas and perspectives.
Y'all, okay. I mean, the principle of what you're saying too is just applicable in how we show up and how we grow as humans too. If we're in our own echo chambers, if we're surrounded by all the people that look like us, it's deeply holding us back in so many different ways. And so, Yada, we're starting to run out of time, but you've got to share how innovation is disrupting the entire grant scene through your work at JustFund. I mean, taking something that's so antiquated, so painful, and making it move so much quicker and, spreading equity in the process. Will you share a little bit about that journey real quick?
I will. And I'll just say for all of us out here experimenting, sometimes the best innovations are right under our nose. Like, with JustFund and the common grant application, it's like so simple. It's like, I mean, really, no one's built this? Well, seriously? Are you sure? Like, can we just do that scan one more time? Why not? And we've just built the first platform in the US and that accepts a common grant application. I understand from my colleagues working in different parts of the world that also other parts of the world don't have a common app platform. Why not, you guys? So with JustFund, what we did was we said, look, money is not flowing to communities of color. That's a big problem from an equity perspective and from a strategic perspective. If we want to win, fund people closest to the issues. Why aren't they getting funded? We're moving $450 billion a year to nonprofits. 4% goes to communities of color. What are we doing? This is inequitable. It's unstrategic. So, when my favorite class in business school, as you all know, was process flow management. I love it. We need to understand the process flow of grant making to see where are the bottlenecks and barriers. And when you have a bottleneck this big, this astounding, there's some systemic problems, right? One of the big problems is it's expensive. It's hard to apply. I don't know where to apply. There's all of this like really exclusionary systems that we've built in philanthropy that's inequitable, and we can fix it through the common app. That's one solution, right? And so we didn't try to build a common app for the whole philanthropic sector. We started with 3 funds. In 2017, we said, hey, can the 3 of us come together and build the common app? So sometimes these innovations don't have to be massive. This is what I'm talking about with the quick win.
That's right.
3 funds come together. Let's build the common app. We'll all agree to it and see what happens. We're now fast forwarding to today. We have 142 funds. We've moved 210 million. 58% of the money that we're moving are secondary grants. So a group comes in through the common app to apply to one fund. They get funded by somebody else, which is what we should be doing. Make it easy, make it simple for money to move. And on top of that, we've saved organizations, are you ready for this? 29 years of time. They would have spent applying for grants that they're going to get 30% of the time. We've saved them that time that they can put forward to mission advancing work and not, mess around with applications that take 15 to 25 hours to complete.
On behalf of the entire nonprofit sector, Yada, thank you so much for going into the bottleneck, because I really think that is where we get stuck. And I think those places where we are stuck, those are rife for innovation points. They are rife to be rethought. And so I thank you, and I apologize for how many people I've sent to you, Yada, because I have connected so many people to you because we think this is just the future and we want more people to get access to it. So you all are podcast alums, and we're so grateful for your wisdom. You know, we wrap up every conversation we have with a one good thing. So I want to kick this to Alison first and say, what is your one good thing? It could be through the lens of innovation. It could be through the lens of a mantra, a life hack. What do you want to leave with the audience today?
I think that human capital is the most one good thing. And if that human capital and that comes in your team, the investment in your team to kind of create magic and do things together and support. And as a leader, I feel like that's just, I think about that morning, noon, and night. But even to some of the conversations that we've had here too, human capital as it relates to partnerships and shoulder to shoulder sort of activity and working and supporting each other in a way that this sector does better than anything else. That's what I think is one good thing. And I think that if I can wake up every day and think about that and how do I maximize that for our own collective benefit, that's a good thing.
I just want to work for one of these women. Like, no offense, boss. I mean, that is truly what we need. We are so good at caring for the external of our mission, but it's like if we could care for each other and care for ourselves, that self-care is just as important. Thank you for valuing the human being. Okay, Sarah, what about you? What's your one good thing?
My one good thing is simplicity. This is something I am striving more toward. I think, especially in the context of innovation, it can feel like more is the only answer. And one of my favorite quotes is the way toward mastery of any endeavor is simplicity. And so I think that often innovation, our work and lives are made better if we can go back to simplicity and how are we doing less to ultimately make it more, whether that's in our lives or in our work or anything in between. So my one good thing is simplicity.
And wrapping it up here with the one good thing I'd say is trust yourself. It's taken me years. I'm now, well into my 40s and finally trusting myself and my leadership and my ability to solve problems, and I think if all of us can find and really believe that we have solutions, because you do, trust yourself to experiment and innovate and try to solve problems. The answers aren't always out there. They're inside of you. And so if we can just unlock that inside of us, we're going to really be able to change the world.
You live that. I remember the first time we ever met Yada, she said, I was looking for a problem, like a solution to a problem. And I looked around and I was like, oh, it's me. I am the person I'm looking for. I have those solutions. So know that you feel so empowered today. I hope you're leaving this conversation, friends, feeling like this is an ideal that not only you can embrace within yourself, but also within your organization.
I mean, I've got like serious chills. I mean, so much is applicable to so many aspects of our work, but I feel so much hope in talking to the three of y'all. And I just want to encourage everybody listening to reach out to y'all. I mean, y'all are humans that I love following your journey. I love following your thought leadership, but to find you on LinkedIn, to plug into your organizations, because truly you're on the leading edge of this and you're just incredible humans too. So thank you for this. Our hearts are full. My chills are still out. Okay, this is good.
So appreciate you all. Really embrace and this revolution of evolution that we're sitting in. This is a moment in time that nonprofit is experiencing that has never been before us. And those who choose to lean into that innovation, they are truly winning this. We're seeing this within our community. Connect with these human beings, trust yourself, and know you've got this, and we're always rooting for you. Peace out, y'all. We'll see you at the next panel.
Thanks so much. This is great.